Hi, fifth graders. It's Mr. P again. Wearing the old OBU Bison hat, my favorite university here in Oklahoma. We're going to go ahead and read our leveled reader this week, and it is Save This Space by Maria Gill. It is a narrative nonfiction. I think we know what that means. It's kind of a social studies read. I hope you enjoy. Let's go ahead and get into it. It says, we've got 2 chapters, it looks like. The introduction. Have you ever been to a place that was really special? How would you feel if it were destroyed? Imagine if the walls of the Grand Canyon were covered with signs, if there were towns in its valleys, and if the Colorado River were filled with trash. What if the animals that live there now were extinct? Colvin and Leopold saw that logging and building roads were destroying wilderness areas. Both men wrote about what they saw in their journals. Colvin worked to take care of forests so that lakes and waters were protected. He drew maps of the Adirondack Mountains. He also explored the source of the Hudson River. Aldo Leopold explained that wildlife and the landscape were important. He also taught people how to take care of their environment. So down here, our picture here, it says, the Grand Canyon is world famous for its amazing scenery. And up here, cutting down trees and building roads can destroy the wilderness forever. Chapter 1. Verplanck Colvin was born in 1847 in Albany, New York. As a boy, Colvin was interested in nature. He loved hiking in the hills. When he was 18, Colvin read a book about the Adirondack Mountains. The author's description of the lakes, rivers, and pine forests captured Colvin's imagination, so he set out to explore the Adirondacks. Colvin took many trips there. In 1870, he climbed Mount Seward, one of the highest mountains in the Adirondacks. Down here, the Adirondacks were in the northern New York state. On these trips, Colvin saw that large areas of the forest were being logged. He saw that debris left by the loggers. Colvin understood that logging would cause terrible damage. Many of the rivers and waterways in New York State and the Adirondack Mountains. In spring, snow in the mountain melts. This feeds the rivers and streams. The forests keep the snow from evaporating or melting too fast. Too much logging would destroy the source of water for the rivers and streams. And up here, we've kind of got a little map here if you want to take a quick look of the Adirondacks, kind of showing you here. And the dark green is the Adirondacks. The blue, surrounded by dark blue, are the lakes. And then the little areas are rivers there. So there's that map for you. Colvin wanted the government to protect the land. To convince officials to do so, Colvin cut some ice from the upper Hudson River. He took it into a meeting in New York City. Colvin made sure that pieces of ice were put into each drinking glass. Then he told the officials where the ice had come from. He said, "We must guard our water supply and maintain the forests which protect the springs and the river sources." Colvin had put the ice in their glasses for emphasis. There's one of our words. And this was a direct quote from Colvin. At this time, there were no good maps of the Adirondacks. In 1872, the government agreed to let Colvin survey and map the Adirondack region. This was not an easy task for Colvin and his team. They had to hike across rough land, kayak along rivers, and climb over sheer mountains. Colvin and his team also came close to dangerous wild animals. Once, Colvin wrestled with a large black bear. Another time, he had to shoot a panther that was hunting him. Here's a little picture down here. To create a map, the surface of the land needed to be measured and drawn. This is called surveying. Colvin spent nearly 30 years surveying and mapping the Adirondacks. He named many lakes in the area. Colvin also followed the Hudson River and found its source, Lake Tyr of the Clouds. Colvin talked to people in the government and wrote in newspapers. He explained why it was important to protect the Adirondacks. Finally, the area was named a park in 1892. Then in 1984, a law was passed that said the park was to be forever kept as wild. Colvin died in 1920, but people still enjoy what he has left behind, the natural wilderness of the Adirondack Park. Up here, the drawing shows Colvin and his team at Lake Tyr of the Clouds. So there's that picture. And then down here, we've got this photo here, It says, why did Colvin think it was important to protect the Adirondacks? Think about that. And up here, how to measure a mountain. If you're ever curious how we measure mountains, this is how. Colvin used a surveying method called triangulation. He and his team measured a line from point A to point B using a 66-foot long chain as a tape measure. Then, from the top of the mountain, point C, Colvin used his telescope to figure out the angles between the points. He used those angles to figure out the distances between the points and the height of the mountains. So from here to here, and then he stood here and used a telescope to look down. And that's how we measure mountains. Chapter 2, Aldo Leopold. Aldo Leopold was like Colvin. He also loved the outdoors. Leopold was born in 1887 in Burlington, Iowa. As a boy, he liked exploring the woods near his home and going hunting with his father. Leopold studied forestry in college. Then in 1909, he got his first job in the Apache National Forest in Arizona. He enjoyed living in the mountains. When his work was done, he liked hunting game, such as deer and ducks. He also liked mapping the area. Leopold wanted to protect game animals. He believed that to keep the animals safe, the forests they lived in needed to be protected too. Leopold also thought that people should keep track of how many game animals there were. That way, they would know which animals were low in numbers and would not hunt them. Like many people at the time, Leopold also believed that game animals should be protected from predators, such as wolves and bears. He was in favor of shooting animals that killed game animals. He thought that would help make sure there was enough game to hunt. This stream is part of a wilderness area inside the Apache National Forest where Leopold worked. As a ranger, Leopold shot mountain lions, but later he fought to protect them. 25 years later, Leopold changed his idea about predators. It happened when he was on a hunting trip in Mexico. He saw that the forest here where he was hunting was an unspoiled wilderness. It was not like the forest he had known. Leopold realized that predators are an important part of forest community. If you remove them, you upset the balance in the community. Leopold saw this happen in the forest of Wisconsin. Most of the wolves and mountain lions had been shot. As a result, the number of deer grew very quickly. They ate all the plants within their reach. In 1942, Leopold showed the people what deer had done to the forests. The damage to the plant life indicated that there were too many deer in the area. Leopold asked the state of Wisconsin to encourage people to hunt deer. He also asked people to stop killing wolves so that wolf numbers would increase. His ideas were not popular at first, but people came to understand that he was right. As an older man, Leopold wanted to save the wolves and not hunt them. If not controlled, deer can do a lot of damage to a forest. They're kind of like nature's vegetable garbage disposals. They will eat every kind of vegetation that they can get a hold of with their mouths. Here's a quote from Aldo Leopold. "You cannot love game and hate predators. The land is one organism." As well as protecting wildlife, Leopold wanted to protect the landscape. In 1915, he went to the Grand Canyon. He was shocked to see the state of the area. There were lots of new roads, hotels, and stores. The trails were lined with trash, and sewage ran into the river. He realized that this couldn't be good for the wildlife. Leopold wrote a plan for the Grand Canyon. It allowed people to enjoy the Grand Canyon and also preserved the landscape and wildlife there. Later, in 1919, the Grand Canyon became a national park. Leopold began to think about helping to protect forests when he suggested that 750,000 acres in the Gila Forest in New Mexico be left as a wilderness area. In 1924, it became the first protected wilderness area in the world. This means that this area cannot be touched. Leopold died in 1948, but many of his ideas are included in the Wilderness Act of 1964. Aldo Leopold is also considered one of the fathers of the National Wilderness System. This system protects more than 700 wilderness areas in 44 states. The United States still has places that are natural, wild, and free because of Aldo Leopold's work. Millions of people visit Grand Canyon each year. There are laws to protect the park from pollution and damage by tourists. The Gila National Forest has spectacular scenery. Down here, Aldo Leopold walks with his dog. So there is a picture of Mr. Leopold. Let's stop here. What were some of the things that made Leopold want to work and protect the environment? Think about that. Our conclusion: thanks to people such as Verplanck Colvin and Aldo Leopold, we still have wilderness areas in the United States today. Colvin worked to protect forests so there would be clean drinking water. He explored thousands of lakes and rivers in the Adirondacks. He also drew maps and measured mountains in the area. Here are some extinct birds. Since the 1850s in North America, the Carolina parakeet, the Labrador duck, and the passenger pigeon have all become extinct. Guys, that was an awesome story, in my opinion. I love reading about nature and how we as people have fought to protect the natural areas we have and the beautiful places we have to go see and visit. And it is so important to keep those and allow you guys, when you grow up, to go and see them, and people that were going to be born hundreds of years from now, they're going to look kind of the same to them as it did to us. I enjoyed reading with you guys. I hope you enjoyed our book, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.